First of all, it's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Is it too much for Xbox? Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, this was kind of a priority on our list this week because Oliver and I were like looking at it, thinking, "What is this headline? It's so strange." Like, it's kind of because when you say the word exclusive to PS5, it immediately conjures up this idea that it's a platform exclusive, in terms of Sony versus Microsoft. But what it's actually saying, the point of the interview in the article, is that it's a PS5 developed game. It's not made for PS4. And so Rebirth is being made specifically for that platform to take advantage of those features on PS5. And it's not to say what can or cannot be done with an Xbox Series X, for example. But as we know, it is for now an exclusive to PS5. As far as I know, it's going to be on that platform for the foreseeable. And so, yeah, it was okay. So on the one hand, a slightly odd headline in some cases, but it is an interesting story because it just shows that the time for cross-gen development on the is sort of subsiding, and we have a game here which is finally pushing forward and taking advantage of. Well, one of the things that's cited in the interview is the SSD speeds, which is it's a big deal, and it sounds like if you know Final Fantasy VII and you know the general structure of it, we're getting a trilogy out of this thing. The first game remake, FF7 remake, was intended to be the Midgar arc, and now we're moving to the Outer World, or so we're going to assume at this point. And that might mean a different priority for the way the visuals present. And I think having next-gen hardware put to good use here is probably a good thing. I don't know. What do you reckon, Oliver?
Yeah, so I thought this was a funny story because the way some outlets were presenting it, I don't think intentionally, but they were basically saying, here is the reason why FF7 is a PS5 exclusive. I think people kind of jumped out of their seats in that one. And of course, the console wars, they start when people say things like that. What can you say? But I actually have a rough transcript. And basically the question was like, Final Fantasy VII Remake was supposed to be PS5 from the beginning, unlike the earlier entry. And then he goes on to explain, it's the SSD is giving us a lot more flexibility. It's giving us this vast open world. And if you remember Final Fantasy VII Remake on PS4, and of course the Intergrade versions, which were based obviously on that version, I think, Tom, you covered it back in the day, and it has like that kind of classic 8th gen corridor syndrome, where you're going from area to area and going through enclosed spaces, and you're kind of shimmying sideways. And everything, and it's a fixed perspective camera, so everything behind you is getting unloaded and everything in front of you is loading in. That's all over.
Classic.
Yeah, and there really aren't any open spaces. I think that game has a very good pacing and all that stuff. I'm not complaining, but it is a pretty limited title. Not even just in terms of the world construction, but also in terms of the asset loading and quality of the assets and things like that. So definitely, given their tech, it's a huge boon, I'm sure, to move over to PS5 for that title. And then there are a couple other technical details that I pulled out of the interview as well outside of the scope. Like Nomura said that the character models for the principal cast are the same as they were in the remake, which sort of suggests to me, along with the trailer that we saw last month, that probably it's outside of a few things that we saw, like I think there was touch bending on the foliage that you can just see briefly. I think this is probably more of an evolution from what we can see of the tech that was in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which isn't obviously a bad thing because that was a tremendous looking title, but that's sort of the direction they're going with it, and of course it's out reasonably soon. So
yeah, got a couple of thoughts on this, because is it a fair question to say FF7 Rebirth couldn't have been achieved on PS4? I mean, I'd say it's probable that you could push it, but it's just how much compromise are you willing to take? We've seen games like The Witcher 3 do big lush environments. You've got like GTAs and Red Deads, and enough proof to show that it can do, but you're also tethering your development to these limited Jaguar CPUs. And also, more than that, you're splitting your development focus between two platforms again, which is, so it's quite exciting to see this is just a dedicated, focused project on one, and we might see a bit of like that proper next-gen potential coming out. But also, when it came to what happened with the PS4 upgrade, the PS5 upgrade of the remake, the original FF7 remake, the upgrades were there. I mean, I did the video, but it was not revolutionary all the time. 60 FPS was awesome. It took a resolution hit to do that, and 4K, obviously, in the 30 FPS mode was incredible. But it's fundamentally the game was still kind of intact. There were some lighting tweaks and that sort of thing, but nothing crazy. So this time we're going to hopefully see more.
Yeah, I definitely think a game of this scope is definitely achievable on PS4 because we've seen it in countless titles, like Tom said. The question is more just like, I guess, number one, is their tool set and their use of UE4, is that kind of up to the task given the extremely high level of asset fidelity they were aiming for with FF7? Maybe they didn't achieve it in all cases, but like in the, if they get environments up to the level that the character models were at, for instance, in FF7, that would be a pretty extraordinary thing. And certainly from what we've seen in the footage, unfortunately, we only have like a low bitrate 1080p asset, as far as I know, of that FF7 Rebirth trailer. But it does look very impressive. They are pulling off some really large environments. Does look like very high quality assets everywhere. Definitely that's the kind of thing that you could not achieve on PS4. You could achieve a version of it on PS4, I think. But I don't think they could have achieved that on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting that we're kind of now getting to the stage where next gen is really starting to take hold, and developers are starting to think, we could do this, we could technically do it, but it's just better that we get our vision like 100% as we want it on, a platform that's well suited for it.
Yeah, it says a lot that we're still referring to it as next gen, because it does feel it's still not quite there. We're still sort of getting around to it. We're still turning the corner into it. It's been the most protracted cross-gen period I've known, and there's been quite a few now. So, yeah.